What happens when you combine the big tyres of a mountain bike with the drop bars of a road bike? Probably something like this actually, this being a brand new open wide. If you're looking for a bike for travelling long distance at speed over rough gravel and forest tracks, then this could be the bike for you. You've got a lightweight, stiff carbon frame with mounts for extra bottles and bags and accessories. Got really wide tyre clearance. These are 54mm wide tyres on a 650B rim, the Schwalbe G1, a good all-round versatile tyre. You can go up to a 61mm tyre, really opening up the options to fit a mountain bike tyre and wheel set. Or you can go for a conventional 700cc wheel with up to a 46mm wide tyre. So plenty of options to build this bike that suit your aspirations and ambitions and the terrain you are riding on. I'll be riding the open wide for a couple of weeks now, both on my local trails that you see behind me, and also at events like Gritfest, a 2-day gravel race in mid-Wales. You see my link to the video above. A couple of things are clear to me. This bike is immense. The speed it offers is just insane. The low weight, the high stiffness, the big tyres, all translates to stunning capability on mixed terrain rides. The handling and ride quality feels very similar to the previous Up, a bike which I really liked, which is no surprise given how much these two bikes share. The steering is calm at high speed, a very relaxing bike to ride over long distance over challenging terrain, and there's no twitchiness to the handling at all. They're all very stable, sure-footed and planted. The stiffness of the frame is apparent when you're climbing out the saddle or sprinting along the road or track. There's no flex from the bottom bracket or head tube at all. So to answer my original question, do the big tyres work on a drop bar road bike, or is it too close to a mountain bike? For me, the open wide retains the handling and sense of purpose you get from a road and gravel bike of covering long distance over all terrains, road and off-road at speed, but adds the extra capability that the big tyres provide. You can definitely get yourself into situations where a mountain bike might make your progress easier or smoother, but for the most part, I found the open wide to retain a distinct riding character that ensures it isn't trying to be a mountain bike. All that performance comes with a hefty price tag, unfortunately. The frame set, the frame and fork, will set you back just over £3,000. Now you have a choice of this sort of primer grey finish, which I kind of like, understated and cool, or you can get a naked carbon frame and take it to your favourite frame sprayer and get a custom paint job, which is a pretty cool feature. You can't, however, buy a complete bike. Open are just too small to offer complete bikes, so you have to buy the frame and build it up to suit your budget and preference.
Maybe you're in Australia, maybe even on the coast, disguised in regalia and making the most of the most.
You might be looking at this bike and thinking it's just the Open Up from 2015, and well, you wouldn't be wrong. It looks very similar. There's lots of common features like the down tube, the really skinny rear stays, but there's a few key features that distinguish this bike and allow it to take much bigger tyres than the Up is capable of. The key feature are the twin dropped chainstays. Now the original Open Up was a key bike because it introduced the idea of a dropped chainstay on the drive side, which allowed wide tyres by moving the chainstay out of that crowded area around the bottom bracket, the chainset and the wheel, while keeping the Q factor, the distance between the pedals, narrow like a road bike. To enable bigger tyres on this bike, they've basically now dropped both chainstays, so on the non-drive side as well, and they've also gone to a 1x only design. So the previous Up could take a double or 1x to suit your preference. This bike, to really maximise the tyre clearance, to really squeeze out every millimetre of clearance at the back end, they've gone to a 1x0 design. So that removal of the front meg and the dropping of both chainstays has allowed them to increase the tyre clearance quite significantly over that previous bike, whilst, and it's very important, maintaining the narrow bottom bracket from a road bike and that narrow Q factor, the stance of the pedals, An added benefit of the drop stays is what they created behind the bottom bracket and the seat tube. There's massive box section which creates a lot of extra stiffness for a very minimal weight gain, and that creates really good power transfer. So if you're a really demanding rider, you want to ride fast over loose terrain, this bike is very efficient in turning your power into forward momentum. There's no flex at the back end at all. That'd be especially useful when you're loading the bike up with bags and equipment and doing long distance adventures. The bike is also more versatile than the previous Up. Got more mounts, got the same top tube mounts as before, but an extra 2 bottle cages on the down tube there, so you can fit a tall keg and an extra bottle as well. So you're doing really long distance rides and you need lots of water. That's an appealing benefit. You also have, for the very first time, mudguard mounts as well, or fenders if you're watching in the US. So for winter riding, you want to put some mudguards on, you now can do with this bike. Like the previous Up, it's full internal cable routing. There's not much cabling on this bike because it's wireless, but we've got the 2 hydraulic hoses in the fork and in the down tube there. And it's a modular system, so it will accept any group set. So take a mechanical group set as well, no problem at all. You've got a press fit bottom bracket. That might raise a few eyebrows, but it's a performance focused bike, so that's why they're going for press fit and not a external threaded like we're starting to see on some gravel adventure bikes. The last detail are the way the disc brake calipers are attached to the frame and fork. Pretty standard on the rear stays here, but on the fork they've basically mounted the caliper directly to the fork and the bolts go through the front of the fork, and that removes the need for the caliper adapter you usually have with a flat mount caliper. So it saves a bit of weight and it's a much cleaner looking bike, although you do have 2 exposed bolt heads from the front of the bike. But it's a kind of cool look, and a few other brands start doing that as well. And of course it's 12mm through axles, 142 at the back, 100 at the front. One key feature carried over from the Up, which benefits the bike when it comes to dealing with vibrations and impact, are these skinny, pencil thin seat stays. They look really cool and they provide quite a bit of extra comfort, just allows a bit of deflection so when you're in the saddle you don't get hammered quite so badly. It's worth talking about some of the components a little bit just because they did impact the performance and the ride quality. And we'll start with a group set. It's a pretty interesting group set because you basically have a hybrid. It's SRAM's new E-TAP Axis group set, which lets you combine road and mountain bike components for the first time. We've got a Force single ring chain set at the front with a 42 chainring matched to hydraulic disc brake levers and brake calipers. But out the back, well, it's very different out the back actually. We have an Eagle mountain bike rear mech and a huge, humongous, whopping 1050 cassette. Now, if you're not into mountain biking, that will look insane to you. But if you're coming from mountain biking, you might be more used to it because that 1050 cassette is a key part of SRAM's mountain bike group set. The basic idea of that cassette is to give you all the range that you lose by going to a single ring at the front from a double with a front mech. And I found it worked really well. There's no hill too steep, no mountain too long, no gradient too savage, where that 52 sprocket doesn't let you spin up with relative ease. I found it worked really well. I was really surprised by how often I did use that 52 sprocket. Now, one benefit of that massive sprocket on the back is you can go up to a bigger chainring at the front, and that forces you to use the 52 more often on steeper gradients. And then when you get to the 10.2 sprocket on the bottom, you have a decent high end gear, so when you're really blatting along on a fast fire road or on a road, you've got a decent top end gear. The gaps between the 10 and 50 are bigger than a regular conventional cassette, but I found they were acceptable and didn't have any problems with finding a right gear to suit whatever terrain I was on. When you're riding off-road on a gravel bike, you tend to find the cadence that suits you, you find a gear that works. You are prepared to compromise a little bit more compared to on a road bike when you're in a group ride where cadence is much more critical. The shifting worked really well. Wire shifting, of course, never missed a beat, worked really well in every situation, whether it's muddy or dry. The chain never fell off at the front and the gears worked at the back nicely. Got one single battery to charge up, so easy maintenance as well. You carry a spare battery if you're doing a longer distance ride. The brakes are phenomenal. They're just what you need when you're screaming down fast fire road descents or technical woodsy trails, just to bring you back to a normal speed from some of the high speeds this bike is very capable of. So that's group set covered. Let's move on to some other parts, starting with the Schwalbe G1 Bite tyres. Now, we are familiar with Schwalbe's G1 tyres here at road.cc and off road.cc, a really good all-round choice. If you're not sure what terrain you'll be riding, what conditions you'll be riding, this is a really good fit and forget option. They deal with gravel, roads, and even mud to a certain extent as well. Only in the winter will I swap to a better mud tyre. But tyre choice is very personal. You can put any tyre on these. These are 54mm wide. There's space for up to 61, so you could go wider, or you could go down the 700cc route and put a 45mm tyre. So it really depends on what sort of riding you're doing. What in God's name was that plane? You're probably wondering how much it weighs. Well, this is a size medium. I put it on the scales and it weighs, so there we go, pretty damn light, not a heavy bike at all. You can save weight, carbon wheels perhaps, but even going to a lower end group set, different components wouldn't increase the weight too much well, so it's very lightweight frame and fork and a good basis for building a dream bike. So in summary, the Open Wide is a deeply impressive bike. If you want to travel at speed, over long distance, over all sorts of terrain from gravel to forest tracks and everything in between, then this is a bike for you. You do have to pay handsomely for it though. They're a very expensive bike. There's no doubt about it. There are better value options from more mainstream brands where you can get a lot more bike for a lot less cash, which does make this bike hard to recommend. But I do love it. I love its speed. I love its handling. I love the fact that you're getting the benefits of the big tyres, but wrapped up with the road bike handling. So it's really agile and responsive and just a lot of fun really. I've had a lot of fun riding this bike. But it's time to give it back, one last ride before it goes back unfortunately. But that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hit that like button if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and maybe hit that notification bell as well so you get alerted to the 2 videos we are doing every week now. So yeah, that's all for now. I'm off for one last spin. I'll see you later.